Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're decoding the invisible emotional guardrails we build just to stay safe. We're calling it the architecture of hypervigilance. If you are someone whose brain works completely overtime just to navigate, everyday, completely normal social interactions, then you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to unpack the really fascinating architecture behind why we do this, and much more importantly, how we can actually start to rebuild it. So let me ask you something. Has a friend recently sent you a text that was just, a tiny bit shorter than usual? Maybe there was no emoji, no exclamation point, not even a quick lull at the end. And did your brain immediately turn that microscopic silence into a full-blown psychological thriller? Did you find yourself literally replaying every single conversation you've had with them for the last 3 years, just agonizing, trying to figure out exactly where you messed up? Or, hey, maybe you have this uncanny knack for walking into a room and without anyone saying a single word, you instantly know who's annoyed, who's exhausted, and who is teetering right on the edge of a meltdown. If you walk through life feeling like a constant detective of microexpressions, constantly scanning your environment for the slightest shift in someone's tone or body language, I really need you to hear this. You are not overreacting, and you are definitely not crazy. Okay, let's dive into this. What you're experiencing actually has a name. It's called hypervigilance. And right off the bat, the most crucial thing to understand is that this is absolutely not a personality flaw. You aren't broken. At its core, hypervigilance is an incredibly smart, albeit deeply, deeply exhausting, adaptation to your environment. It's really just your system doing exactly what it was trained to do to keep you safe. Think of it kind of like having a super dedicated security guard stationed permanently inside your brain. This guard is so intensely committed to protecting you from harm that it ends up overreacting to completely neutral, harmless cues. Honestly, this security guard is so overzealous that it's basically tackling absolutely everyone who walks through the front door, including the mailman who's just trying to drop off a package. Now, this mental architecture doesn't just poof into existence out of nowhere. Usually, it starts way back in childhood. Specifically, it grows out of environments where emotions were either highly unpredictable or maybe they were way too quiet. Did you feel like you had to be the good child just to keep the peace and avoid conflict? Or maybe you were the invisible child, figuring out early on that being totally low maintenance was the only safe way to exist in your house. You learned, probably before you could even articulate it, that anticipating an adult's mood was your #1 survival tool. You see, you weren't just a regular kid going about your day doing normal kid stuff. You were a master strategist. You were constantly playing 10 moves ahead on a massive mental chessboard, just trying to maintain a baseline sense of safety in your own home. Literally every action, every spoken word, every silence, it was all carefully calculated to keep the peace. So, fast forward to right now. How do those childhood adaptations actually show up for us as adult guardrails? Well, today, your brain is still viewing almost every single social interaction as a potential threat. And that leads to intense analysis paralysis. You probably find yourself wasting hours replaying and editing conversations in your head, just agonizing over whether you said the right thing. And you instinctively suppress anything that feels even remotely like a messy emotion, like anger or sadness, because you learned a long time ago that showing those just wasn't safe. Which brings us to what's often called swan mode. It is a classic defense mechanism. To everyone else, you look perfectly calm, incredibly graceful, and totally put together on the surface. Everyone around you probably thinks you've got it all completely under control. But underneath the water, oh man, you are paddling like crazy just to keep your head above the surface. It's entirely performative calm, and it's hiding a massive amount of fear. But here's the catch with living your life in the swan mode and keeping that internal security guard on high alert all the time. You get stuck in Defcon 1. You're basically trapped in a 24/7 fight-or-flight response, and eventually, being in that constant state of high alert leads to just massive emotional exhaustion. Have you ever suddenly felt totally numb or completely detached from the world around you? Yeah, that is literally your nervous system trying its hardest to conserve energy by shutting down non-essential functions. I really want you to hear this clearly. You are not lazy, and you are for sure not too sensitive. You are just exhausted. You've been carrying around this heavy, clunky iron suit of armor that was never, ever meant to be worn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your body is just doing the absolute best it can to survive the heavy load. All right, take a breath, because here is the really good news. You don't have to live inside that heavy armor forever. We can absolutely start renovating this architecture. And look, healing isn't about having one single magical lightning bolt breakthrough. It's actually about small, deliberate, daily habits that slowly, over time, teach your nervous system that safety is actually a real possibility in your adult life. A really brilliant place to start is by changing how we protect ourselves, because often our instinct is to just build an emotional wall. But a wall keeps absolutely everyone and everything out, which ultimately just leaves us incredibly isolated. What we want to build instead is an emotional firewall. This concept is just so great because a firewall is strategic. It lets you decide exactly how much of someone else's chaos you're going to allow into your own internal world. It means you can still love a friend or be highly supportive from a distance without having to absorb their moods or somehow become their 24/7 therapist. Another really powerful tool for this whole renovation process is literally getting out of your racing mind and bringing it back into your body. So the next time you feel that familiar urge to start spiraling into analysis over some perceived social threat, just hit pause. Ask yourself, where do I actually feel this in my physical body right now? Do a quick check-in. Is your chest suddenly super tight? Do you have that heavy sinking pit in your stomach? And once you can actually pinpoint that physical feeling, you can use a totally actionable grounding ritual to just completely interrupt that anxiety spiral. The 5-4-3-2-1 technique is absolutely fantastic for this. You literally just look around the room and out loud, you name 5 things you can see, then you touch 4 things around you, listen carefully for 3 sounds, identify 2 things you can smell, and finally note 1 thing you can taste. Now, you might be wondering, why does doing something as simple as looking around a room actually work? Well, by anchoring your senses back to the present moment, you are physiologically signaling safety to your vagus nerve. That's essentially your body's internal calming superhighway. You're literally sending a biological text message directly to your brain's exhausted internal security guard, telling it, hey, we are safe right now. You can finally clock out and take a break. Now, as you get better at practicing pulling yourself back to the present, you also have to tackle the perfectionism trap. Because hypervigilance is so often fueled by this totally false belief that if you can just manage yourself perfectly, if you never make a mistake, if you never say the wrong thing, then you'll be completely safe from judgment. But I want to invite you to try something different. Try embracing the radical act of just being good enough. Because honestly, flawless self-management, it's a total illusion. I really want you to hold on to this thought. You are allowed to be messy, and you are allowed to be human. Your deep, highly analytical mind is such an incredible gift. It gives you this profound, beautiful capacity for empathy and understanding. But it needs to serve you, not act as your prison. You don't have to carry all that heavy armor around alone anymore. So, what does this all mean for you? Let's keep this conversation going. How has hypervigilance shown up in your own life? And what's just one small way you're going to practice a little self-compassion today? Drop your experiences down in the comments, because honestly, your story might be exactly what someone else out there needs to read today to feel just a little bit less alone on their journey. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. You've got this, and I'll catch you next time.